Spirit will always know your personality. They know everybody's personality they're dealing with. They know your fears. They know how to get you to do something.
My awareness expanded far enough where they could come to me. So when you're doing mediumship, Michael, you raise your energy, the people on the other side lower theirs, and then there's a blending process. It's called a link and blend.
They still want to fix and rectify and resolve on the other side, and they're so anxious and desperate to connect with us and help us.
This has always been very much like a voice that emerges in my head that blocks out all of the other thoughts.
You're saying, I'm a medium. Here's what I do. Here's my game. Here's how I play it. And what was Spirit telling you? And what was the process you went through of, I'm going to go surrendering to the light within? What was your process of saying, okay, I'm going to let go?
It was a hard one and it was a long one because I'm a very cerebral person. I'm a Gemini. So I'm an air sign. Not an airhead, an air sign, just for those who don't understand astrology. And I'm very cerebral. So things have to make sense to me. I need to understand something before I can actually do it or actually be interested in it. And Spirit kept saying to me, you don't need to know everything. We'll give you to the best of your ability to understand the way Spirit works in a linear fashion. But they showed me that's not how Spirit works at all. So when I started to trust that they would always be there for me, because what my biggest fear when I started channeling was, what if nothing shows up for me and I have a client sitting in front of me and there's my ego. I didn't want to feel like a fool or a fraud. And this was this thing where I went from being a legal, like a secretary in an office in a corporate world in real estate, to being able to know how to master everything that I did, to completely going in blind, having to have faith, and at the same time claiming that I'm channeling. So I wanted to be able to back up my claims. But Spirit would just keep laughing at me and saying, that's not how this works. Once you believe us and trust that we are there always, that will speak for itself. That will be the claim. It took me so long to leave my ego at the door and to just trust. But once I did that, the rest is history. It hasn't stopped. And this is what I teach my students when they join my classes. Number one rule, leave your ego at the door. Like when people enter a room and you say, please take off your shoes, I tell them, please take off your ego. Because it's very hard to learn this work when you think you're going to control it.
How do we take off our ego shoes?
So I am a big believer in taking off the training wheels right away. Just get on that bike and start rolling. Because I've done it many times with my students, and I love when Spirit shows them that they can do this work. Now, I'll tell you what it looks like, Michael. They start to tune into some object or a person, because I have them do these test exercises in class. And I can actually see their facial expressions and their pauses when the logical brain kicks in. And I will stop them midstream and say, stop thinking. That's your ego. Stop making logic. That's your ego. Stop worrying if you're wrong. That's your ego. And I will say it out loud to them in the moment as they're trying to pick up information. And sometimes I'll say, you're taking too long. That's not how Spirit works. Because Spirit will come in as a flow. Sometimes you'll pause when you're not understanding the message. And I just remind them. It's really repetitive, like when you go to a gym. You have to just keep training that muscle, but not, the spirit doesn't filter through a mind. It filters through the spirit. So it's more about feeling than thinking. Thinking has to stay out of it, because we just become a clear channel, a clear vessel, like an interpreter for the deaf. That's how I like to equate it. Have you ever seen an interpreter for the deaf changing the message? No, they don't. They can't. They're just standing on a stage with the sign language, wanting to get as close to the message as possible. And so you train yourself to leave yourself out of it.
Is there a tool? So I'm going to, I guess my thinking mind is going there. Anders Ericsson, he is the author and scientist who came up with the 10,000 hour rule that came out in Malcolm Gladwell's books or became popularized there. And he talks about having deliberate feedback, that the way to become great at anything is to get feedback, to know how am I doing and be able to improve, how am I doing and be able to improve. How can we, in a world, at least in the West, but I'm going to say it's a worldwide phenomenon, where we've been trained that mind is king, mind is God. How do we begin to recognize, hey, wait, because we're so indoctrinated in the mind, we may not even recognize it. This is my mind, not my intuitive self. This is not heart speaking. And then to bring ourselves back.
That's a loaded question, but because there's so many layers to that. Because obviously we need the mind to interpret the message. So we need to go into the mind, into that Rolodex that we have of a frame of reference. So my guides speak to me in metaphors, pictures, a lot of movies, things that happened in my own life. So they have to go through our memory bank, which is the mind. They have to utilize what we've learned and what we use as a frame of reference in our own experiences in order for us to mirror that to deliver the message. There have been some words I've channeled that I've had to look up that I've never heard of. So that's one way that I know it didn't come from me. But to get back to your question, it's, to some degree, we can control our lives to live healthy, to be safe, to stay alive, right? We have to stay alive. We have to eat the right foods. We have to actually own accountability for a job or for some kind of task in life and sole purpose. But other than that, when we have a decision to make and we just don't know which way to go, the logical brain will always kick it back to fear. Like, in other words, you have to see, where would the blockages be? Like, how am I coming up with that decision? And I love to give examples because this is the best way that I like to teach. What if you love to swim, but you never learned how to swim because your mother was afraid of drowning herself, and she taught you how to be afraid of the water, okay? So then it's like, should I go in the water? Should I not go in the water? But my soul wants to go in the water. But I wind up not going in the water because my mother always taught me I will drown, because that was her fear. So fears get transferred onto us. Programs get transferred onto us. So how do you make a clean cut, biased, unbiased decision in the mind when everything's tainted? You have to say, is that my control issues that's helping me make that decision? Or is it the right decision? Like, are you a control freak? Are you basing it in fear? I always say, don't base choices in fear. But when you have the answers that come and filter through your heart, I say the easiest way to recognize the right decision is when it makes the least amount of sense. Does that make sense? Let me tell you personally what works for me. And everyone at home can try this. I was exactly what you just said, I struggled with in the very beginning. And I said to Spirit, when you want me to do something, you need to show it to me in 3 different ways, 3 different times. I need the 3 rule, the 3. And sure enough, it came up 3 times. But also, I take it one step further. Spirit will always know your personality. They know everybody's personality they're dealing with. They know your triggers. They know your fears. And when I say they, you know, I could speak from your relatives on the other side to your spirit guides to the angels. You know, really, we can go to all of it. They know your fears. They know how to get you to do something. And they know how to bring something to you. Because when I retrace my steps, when Spirit was trying to get me to do something, I realized they brought certain people into my life. They pushed me to do things I wouldn't normally do, right? But there's always this constant conversation that you should be having. It's not a one and done deal. It's just like Spirit taking you by the hand, and you need signs. You need them to show you. When I first started doing readings, there were some people that were so easy to read and some people that were really tough. And whenever I was done with the reading, with some people, I wasn't sure if they were happy or did I make a difference. And I would start to beat myself up over it, which is the ego. I now know this. I didn't know that back then. And I'm like, did I say it wrong? How come they didn't cry? How come they didn't seem happy? So I said to Spirit, like a bratty girl, if you want me to continue doing this, I need to know I'm on the right track. I need proof. What happened with that lady who just left? She wasn't happy. Within a day, this happened so many times. I would either get an email from that person calling to rebook right away. They want to get on my waiting list for the following year, recommending people, wanting to have groups at their house. So there was my answer. They were happy. And then I realized that people show their emotions differently. So I had to take myself out of every equation when it came to doing this work and when it came to me trusting Spirit. And you really do start to recognize ego after that. And I'm like, they're probably, my guides are laughing at me. But they always gave me the proof I needed or the encouragement to keep going. And everybody's guides will do that for them too, I promise. I've seen it happen way too many times. But you must have an open, clear communication with them.
Which means it's a practice that we want to start cultivating on a daily basis, isn't it?
Yes, yes. Moment to moment. Yes. When people think they're all alone and everything's weighing on their shoulders, take a minute or a second, take a deep breath, center yourself, stop all the chaos in your mind. Breathing helps me. The breath helps most people to center. Slow down the mind. Put your hands over your heart. Feel your heart beating. And then ask the same question. And then feel your answer. There's a word that's going around the spiritual community that's called resonate. Does it resonate? And I love that word because when something resonates, it does not have to make sense. It just has to feel right. There's no resistance. Now, if there's a resistance in that time, that just might not be the right time for you, right? Because timing is everything. So we have to get out of the ego again and just say, okay, maybe not now, but maybe sometime it will resonate. Just like a certain book you pick up, it doesn't resonate and you put it down. And a year later you pick up the same book and you just devour every chapter because now you're ready to hear the message and then it will resonate.
2 years into doing readings, people on the other side started showing up, which was really weird because I said, all right, wait a minute. Here I am trying to be a psychic, going with all that goes with that, the skeptics. Now what? Dead people are talking to me? Because remember, I'm from the streets.
Let me pause you for a brief second. So I've got to get definitions on both psychic and medium, and were you hearing things first, and then now it's what is it? Auto clairvoyance, audio. What is going on? How do we put that in perspective? What did that look or feel like?
You're a really good interviewer. Psychic and mediumship, there's a difference, okay? A psychic is someone who can look at you, Michael, or your wife, or your friends, or anybody. They're getting information from your aura, your past, your present, your potential future. They're getting it from you. Mm-hmm. Mediums are different. They're getting it directly, not from you. I'm getting communication directly from the other side. So look at it this way. Psychics perceive, mediums receive. Psychics perceive, mediums receive. When I'm doing mediumship work, I know I'm connecting to the other side, okay? Or a trained medium, they know this, not from you. So there is a difference. So it's this way. Every medium is psychic, but not every psychic is a medium. So we need people that are psychic. So I can do both. What happened was I was reading cards, for this girl named Mari, and she was a student in art. Now, a lot of people, when they come to see me psychically, or when they used to, because I don't do so many privates anymore, it's not just about the future. It's about their life, their career. And she was an art student. And we were talking about her project, the colors that I saw her using, where it was going to go. And as I'm talking to her, in comes her aunt. And I'm like, well,
Aunt Ada?
Yeah, Aunt Ada. And you're thinking, well, what do you mean comes in? There's ways that we perceive. Some people see things, feel things, or hear things, okay? At that time, I was all three. I'm sitting with Mari, and right beside her, an old woman appeared. Now, don't think like it's like the movies, okay? So I'm sitting with Mari, and don't think about it like it's, like I said, like it's you see on television. It's almost like, Michael, if I ask you, can you picture your kitchen in your mind's eye as you're speaking with me right now? Can you see it? Yeah. That's what it was like. I was aware there was an older woman beside her, okay? And I said, Mari, there's a woman right beside you. And I'm looking at Mari, I'm looking at the woman, and it's an older woman, and all she did was point to her ring. And none of her clothes matched. And I don't know why I noticed that, but nothing matched. I said, Mari, there's an elderly woman right beside you. Her clothes don't match, and she's showing me a diamond. Well, she got up and screamed, which made me get up and scream. I hugged her. She hugged me. And I said, Mari, what is that? Her great aunt Ada, who passed away, was colorblind. Mm-hmm. So there's the clothes. That didn't make sense. And the ring that she's wearing right now, Mari, was in the Aunt Ada left it for Mari, her diamond. So that's the first time spirit came in to the readings. So why did that happen? I used to see the spirit people when I was a kid, but so what changed? This is what happened. 2 years, I guess the ability was there. 2 years into doing readings over and over, always kept my day job. Always kept my day job. I would do the readings at night or on the weekends. After doing reading one after another, my aura must have expanded, or my awareness expanded far enough where they could come to me. So when you're doing mediumship, Michael, you raise your energy, the people on the other side lower theirs, and then there's a blending process. It's called a link and blend.
Let me pause you for a brief second, because I'm getting goosebumps. So I feel called to ask this. Yep. Is something, if we take baby steps, yes, is this something we can all work to? Because it sounds like, in a sense, you're raising your energy.
Right, you're raising your vibe.
Can we all raise our vibes there?
Absolutely, everyone can raise their vibe. And some people, I don't know if everyone could be a medium, but I know everyone can touch on mediumship. Everyone is psychic. That's not a problem. And someone says, are mediums born or made? I think it's both, okay? I used to say they're just born, but I was getting too much slack about that because I teach many students. If the ability is there, it's almost like Michael playing the piano. You can learn to play, but does that mean you're going to be a professional pianist? It takes a certain constitution and chemical makeup to keep doing it.
How do we cultivate this or grow this rather than kind of snuff that flame?
Well, for yourself, find out if you're clairsentient, clairaudient, or clairvoyant. And some of the indicators are clairsentient. Your feelings are heard easily. Mm-hmm. You're sensitive around other people. Mm-hmm. Watch the words that you use. I don't like the feel of the picture there. I don't like the feel of the couch there. I don't like what I'm feeling about that person. Most likely you're clairsentient. Mm-hmm. Clairvoyance is different. It's with the third eye. I don't like the look of the picture there. I don't like what I'm looking at. I don't like the looks of that. You know what I mean? So there's people who are clairvoyant, they dream well. They dream color. A lot of artists are clairvoyant. And it's not just about seeing into the future. A lot of people say, John, I want to see into the astral realm. And I joke with them saying, look around your own world first, because too many of us, we're on our phones. We never look around at the beauty that's around us, Michael, the trees, the sky, the ocean. We're so focused on the phone and looking down. Am I right? Most people don't even look at each other anymore. We can't touch anybody anymore because it's against the law to hug somebody, for Christ's sake. It's in another way too, clairaudient, to hear. Have you ever heard your name being called when nobody is there? Now I know some of the audience are like, oh my God. It happens to husband and wives all the time. Yeah. Jessica could be in the other room. What do you want? And she's going to say, I'm not calling you. But she might have been thinking about you, because clairaudience travels on telepathy. Mm-hmm. And with clairaudience, it's the hardest to develop. Just go outside, listen. When you're out near the ocean, listen to the ocean. Listen to the traffic in the distance. Listen to kids playing. So clairaudience is it's a rare one to develop, but I have that.
Can you develop it? And this might be outside of the scope of here. Can you develop it so that a couple can literally start to learn to walkie-talkie? Well, there's old school, but walkie-talkie with each other?
Sure. I mean, will it be like walkie-talkie? I mean, it's the wife have to be clairaudient and the husband would have to be clairaudient. It's in the throat center. And if anyone studies the energy centers, solar plexus is clairsentience. Clairvoyance is the third eye, and clairaudience, to hear, is the throat center. So I always tell people, no matter where I was, every teacher I studied, every book, if I could turn the camera and show you all the books, this is just I got a stack here. I got tons and tons. I read them all. It all came down to this: meditation, breath, chakra, okay, and using the aura. You study those four things, you can't help but to be intuitive. Meditation, chakra, aura, breath. It's amazing. So the energy centers, you can do this, but have fun with it. Know that you are psychic. And you know what gets me, Michael? It's free. It's free. It's there for you. You don't need to be a transcendent master to tap in. And it's not all about just looking into the future. Wouldn't you like to know help at work? Wouldn't you like to know what's going to happen in a meeting? Wouldn't you like to use your ability to in your artwork and studying the energy centers? It's only going to help you physically at the same time too. So spiritually and physically. But don't take the subject way too far. Don't go out there with it. Stay grounded with this, because you're a physical being and a spiritual being. You have to honor both sides of you.
Then how do we cultivate it in our children?
Listen to your kids. And I wrote that in Spirit Whisperer, which is part 2 to Born Knowing. I couldn't come up with Spirit Whisperer because there's some things that I witnessed in England that I wasn't just want to throw that at the audience. Get to know me first, then I did it.
Makes sense.
There's a whole section in there for kids. I mean, for parents and teachers to help intuitive kids now, because many kids, they're seeing things, they know things. I think kids are being born more and more aware. Do you understand? I really think this. And so when a kid's saying, Mom, there's somebody in my room, and don't say to the kid, yeah, right, it's your imagination. Ask the kid, is it a man or a woman? What do they look like? What are they saying? Ask the kid questions, because you know how kids can talk. Like they're 2-3 years old. They'll tell you it's an old woman in a green dress. Oh my God, that could be that could be somebody's grandmother. It could be the parent's grandmother, and it could be now it's the great grandmother to the kid. So get out a picture book. And don't point to, just let the kid go do the book, and you'd be surprised. The kid might say, oh my God, that's the lady. The best thing to do for you is to listen to your children and let them know that it's normal. Just like art, just like music, that they just have an ability. But I don't want someone to become a stage mother and say, go ahead, do it. You know, when somebody comes over for a cup of coffee. So just listen to your kids. But there's a whole chapter in the Spirit Whisperer to help parents and teachers to help these kids. And kids, they're being born more and more sensitive, so you might as well be able to know what's going on. Best thing also, educate yourself, parents, okay? And the teachers who are listening to me right now, okay? Educate yourself on the subject of psychic ability, energy centers, meditation, So you're educated to teach your child.
Are there certain types of meditation that are more important than others for this?
I think it's all good. I mean, for mediumship, you have to clear your mind, but nobody ever really clears their mind, Michael. It's impossible. But you can, any meditation, a lot of people think meditation is sitting in a cave with an incense, chanting, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om. No. Anytime you meditate, it's doing something in repetition. So if you're antsy and you can't sit, then do a labyrinth, a meditation in motion. Walk the beach to the count of 10, count over. Look at a mandala on the wall and stare at it, and that can take you into a meditation. Look at a candle flame. That can take you into meditation, because you could be on an elliptical. Speaking about going to the gym, you can be on an elliptical machine. People zone out. Why? Because they're doing the same thing over and over. Anything that you repeat, because you have to clear your mind for intuitive thoughts. You have to clear your mind the spirit people can impress you with their thoughts. And if you get a thought, let it go, bring it back to the breath. You have another thought, how many emails I have. Life will try to stop you, by the way. Life will try to stop you. How many emails do I have? You're meditating. I wonder what the dog's doing. I wonder what the kids are doing. God, why am I doing this? God, am I uncomfortable? It gets easier. Okay, you don't have to do an hour. Start off with 10 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day. But you know what happens, Michael? A lot of people say to me, I don't have 5 minutes. Well, that's sad. If you can't take 5 minutes twice a day out of you, then make the time, guys, because your spirit is worth it. So when it comes to kids, listen to your kids. In meditation, whatever works for you, whether it's a walking meditation, a mandala, a yantra, repeating the word, looking at a candle flame, find out what works for you. They're all good. And it'll also help you physically, your blood pressure, your health, your energy. So it works both ways.
It's not like hearing something in the room. It's not like that's a form of clairaudience. People hear like the voice across their midturn and they say, who the hell was that? This has always been very much like a voice that emerges in my head that blocks out all of the other thoughts. And it's got a very sort of specific and direct quality that I've come to recognize and trust. And I really am, when I'm channeling, just taking dictation. At the beginning, it was different. Imagine that you're cutting up, a cabbage for a salad, and all of this, and you're thinking about the cabbage, and all of a sudden you hear the name Monica out of the blue, and you don't know a Monica, you're not thinking about a Monica, but Monica just sort of moves to the forefront of consciousness. That's what it was like. It was always unexpected and never really made sense in the context of where my own mind was going. If you can imagine sort of a radio that's always playing static, which are, say, my own thoughts, and then suddenly something pushing through. And really at the beginning, it was like pushing through the static to make itself known. That was the beginning of the clairaudience for me. I think also in those days, I had a very busy head. And as I've continued to work, it's gotten a lot easier. So this is a much more organic transmission now with my guides.
At the time, was there a pushing back, either a denial or an I don't want or what in the world?
Yeah, there was. I think I was fortunate in that the way that I developed was in a public situation. So I had my hands on somebody, and if I had my hand on your chest and I said the name, and I heard the name Arthur, and I learned to say, who's Arthur? And you'd say, well, that's my father or my brother or, whatever. I began to get the affirmation for what was coming. And so that allowed me to begin to develop a level of trust. Hearing for myself, has always been a bit more of a challenge because my personality self or my ego can get in the way. But when I'm channeling a text or I'm doing a workshop or I'm reading for a client, I'm able to move into a place of neutrality that really allows the transmission to come through pretty unimpeded.
Would you say because listening to this text or reading this, that's weird that I said listening to this text.
It's okay.
But I guess reading this transmission, you still, I don't know if the guides still say, Paul is not this, Paul is not that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Paul is resisting. I think that's what they're saying, or Paul is worried about the level of transmission. It's not the level of transmission. It's essentially I'm a conscious channel. I'm not out cold for this.
Right.
There are channels and mediums that just disappear. I've heard it said, whether it's true or not, from somebody who used to work with Jay-Z Knight many years ago, that when she channeled, it was like she was dying every time and she wouldn't remember anything. When I'm channeling, there are varying degrees of my completely withdrawing from the experience. At its best, it's like I'm climbing into the back seat of the car and going to sleep. Mm-hmm. But I still know that I'm in a car, and I can still hear the gravel under the tires, and I can still sort of have an awareness of what's going on. Other times, when the transmission is coming through and I'm challenged by the content, yep, because I'm listening along, it's like I'm leaning over into the front seat saying, what the hell do you think you're talking about? And I think the part of that comes through is my own possibly unnecessary sense of accountability to my participation in this process. I mean, I am not a spiritual teacher. I can't say that I feel terrifically evolved. I'm the guy that sits in the chair. I do my best. I'm a student of this teaching. Mm-hmm. But I don't claim to be the author of it. My guides have just told me only recently, when I've expressed this concern to them, they said, well, you're not the teacher, you're an ambassador of the teaching. And I'm fine. But if you can imagine the ambassador saying to the president, I don't understand what the hell you're talking about, that's kind of what it's like. And it actually then allows them to come through and either restate the teaching or unpack the teaching or explain my discomfort to me, which can just be my own fear or my own desire to control something that's not mine to control. I've heard from readers of the text that these interruptions, because they appear in the texts as interruptions, because for those who don't know my work, the books are all the written transcriptions of the verbal channelings. There's no writing involved. So if I go, what the hell are they talking about? That might appear in the book as interruption, or the guides just may say, Paul is interrupting, and he is concerned, and we will address it. And sometimes they decide not to address it and just barrel on. They'll come back to me later, which is actually fine too, as long as I know that, as someone who's in essence a collaborator, and I'm a collaborator in that, like I'm the radio for the broadcast. I don't choose the station that's playing, or I do actually when I'm channeling. That's what I do is I choose to hear, but I'm not orchestrating it. So that's my role with this. And the interruptions, when they happen, is just usually a little bit of my own resistance to what's coming through.
I think it's actually, in a sense, maybe you've heard this before, perfect. Insofar as your resistance, as I read it, would be, it's like when I'm talking with you here and I have people listening behind me, and I say listening behind me, I'm just picturing the audience right behind me, and I ask for clarification or something, try to understand where the audience is coming from. That, in a sense, is what you're doing. That resistance does give the opportunity for a doubling back that makes things either a lot clearer for the audience, or it makes the audience, you almost trust things at a higher level, because we're so used to a certain level of skepticism that if something comes through and it's not, quote, balanced, we don't believe it. We throw it out.
Oh, I mean, honestly, some of the most evolved people I've ever met in my life could care less about channeling. And they're not running around to retreats, but they're really completely, in my opinion, I can be floored by their humility and their grace and the level that they operate on. So when I say that I still have fear, my human self is still present. Now, in some ways, I think you have to be conscious of confusing the radio with the broadcast. When I'm tuning into you psychically, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing your stuff. That's my practice. When I'm hearing my guides are the broadcast I'm playing. I will say that I have an energy system, for whatever reasons, that seems to accommodate this. But I will also say, just so you know, that the level of fear that I operate with now is about 1,000,000 times less than I used to.
Woohoo!
Well, and I will say woohoo to that.
Mhm.
But, I mean, there are things about me that are just also intrinsically me. I'm kind of shy. I don't like crowds. I don't like loud noises. This is just parts of Paul. I don't judge them as good or bad. There are ways that I know myself. To assume that when I'm more evolved, I'm going to like loud sounds and crowds would be somebody's supposition. I mean, I think one of the things the guides say, and I'm not saying this at all in my defense because I don't have anything to defend here, but they say, our belief in what it means to be enlightened is still a product of the small self. It's some projection by the ego about what it means. What they're talking about is being. This is about being. It's not about getting there. It's about being as the divine self, or allowing the truth of who and what you are to operate as and through you, which the guides say is service. One of their big claims in their teachings, and it's actually an energetic attunement, is I know who I am, I know what I am, I know how I serve. And they say how each one serves is how they're most fully realized as the true self.
Wow. That's powerful. That's actually something Jessica and I have just started, my wife and I have just started logging each time that something gets repeated in other talks, because we see these things come. We interview a person a day, and so we see them come in clusters.
Got it.
And that has been maybe the number one or number two cluster right now is the servant leader, the servant.
Yeah. But you see, the idea of service, I think, also gets corrupted in some ways by our ideas of what it means to be in service. In the new book, there were several sections of the book that were actually lectures that were delivered during live streams. I do these live streams on Wednesday nights, and the guides would say at the end of a session, and by the way, this is in the book, and I go, okay. And we left some of the questions from the Q&A, and there was this woman who said, and it's in the book, she said, I drive a school bus for a living, and I do all the work that your guides say, and when the kids get on my bus, I'm seeing the divine in each of them. But what am I supposed to do to progress? And the guides say you're doing it. I mean, that's extraordinary service. But you see, sometimes we think I'm supposed to go be a Reiki master. I'm supposed to go be a nurse. I have a lot of nurses in my practice as clients, and some of them would be much, much happier doing something else. The guides say how each one serves, whoever you are, is how you're most fully realized as your true self. Because that gives everybody else permission to do the same thing, but it's also an understanding that it's the divine operating through you in this way. It's not the small self ascribing what service means, which will always be colored, I think, by what we've been taught. And I think what we've been taught isn't necessarily so here.
How does one, this is going to sound too simple, but how does one work on one's knowing?
Oh, I think the first thing is by claiming it, by understanding the difference between the two things. I mean, one of the things the guides say is, go to a time in your life when you knew something. Like, I knew the relationship was over. I knew I got the job. I knew the kid was sick, whatever. I knew whatever. And remember what it felt like to know. And it's something that's very specific in the body, and in my field, I can tell the difference. Now, the difference they would say, go to a time in your life when you were thinking, I thought I got the job. I thought even if you do it right now, I think I know what's for dinner. I think I know what the weather's going to be like tomorrow. I think I know how this interview will be received, whatever it might be, and see what the difference is. And there's a really significant difference between thinking and knowing. And my own sense is that when I'm in my knowing, there's not a question attached to it. It's not arrogant knowing, I'm the best one here. That would be the ego. But the knowing of one's own inherent worth as a divine being is a huge thing.
Well, let me pause you right there, because that's something the guides are going after again and again and again and again and again in the book.
Yeah.
How do we, and they use the analogy of the mountain, they can't climb up the mountain for us. How do we begin to get how valuable we really are?
Well, let's get the word valuable off the table, because that's loaded, first of all. What is valuable? What is valuable is what's in my world. Somebody told me, you see these videos of like the concert violinist playing in the subway and everybody ignores him because he's got a hat. He's got a hat down collecting coins. You put him on a stage, people are paying $200 a ticket, and they're applauding because they've been told the value of something. Now, and we live in a world that believes, which is insane, that one man is more worthy than the next for whatever reasons. That's nuts. My guides say you were born, you have a right to be here. Whoever the hell you were born, you already have the ticket. You're already worthy. Now, knowing one's worth is something different, and they talk about our divinity as our birthright. And they talk about all of this stuff is claiming your inheritance. I mean, I'm not a New Testament guy. I wasn't raised with this, but I think there's a line in the New Testament that it's, the Father's good wishes to give you the kingdom. Or, I think it's something like that. Mm-hmm. Essentially, it means that it's ours to claim, but we need to know that we're worthy of this. Now, I can't say, I know where I struggle with this still. And there are areas of my life where I do, and there are areas of my life where I don't anymore. But I will say, in my life, I've been as broke as anybody can be. I've been as frightened as anybody can be. I've been as ashamed of my body or my life or my whatever as anybody else can be. I know what these things are like. And frankly, I'm grateful that I know them, because when I'm reading people, which is one of the things I do, I recognize it when I tune in. I recognize what that note is that's being played, and can then consequently support people in moving past it or moving to a higher way of being. So I don't know, I went off on a tangent here, but this whole thing of worth, here's the simple metaphor that the guides give in the books. Mm-hmm. We're always ordering off of a menu, and the menu that we're ordering off of is what we think we can have. And what we think we can have is what we think we deserve or we're going to get. And that's it. So if
it's a paradigm menu.
Totally. But if I believe that I'm only allowed so much joy or so much whatever, that's more than likely all I'm going to claim. And until we realize that we can ask for more, and I'm not talking about more money, more this, more that, I mean the big more, a greater sense of our own worth, we can't claim more until we believe that we're worthy of it. And this is a challenge. I mean, it's been a challenge for me. I didn't come into this stuff because first of all, I'm not somebody that went looking for spirituality because my life was going so good. I'm one of those people that sort of fell through the hole into this other world and went, what the hell is this? Mm-hmm. Because from where I came, which was pretty much atheism, to the belief that there was something more, whatever you want to call it, higher power, universe, God, was the equivalent of moving to a whole different continent. Because if there was such a thing, the world was not as I thought it was or was told it could be. I mean, I operate my work in many ways as someone who's telepathic. That's the nature of my work. I hear. And an empath, I feel. I can, if you want to know what's going on with your wife, who I've never met, I can probably step into her by name and then begin to take on her stuff. That's what I do. It's what I sit in my office and do much of the day now. I used to be a college teacher, which was a whole other different thing. But the fact that, that's even possible that I can do this and be accurate, and I've been filmed doing it, and it's kind of fascinating to see, means that I'm not just the physical body, nor are you, and that there are levels of exchange happening in consciousness all the time. I think that's very, very exciting, and hopefully one day science will catch up to it, but it means we're so much more than just the bodies we walk around in.
What shocks you the most when you connect with spirit?
Well, that's really interesting question, Michael, because it's not that I'm surprised at all being able to connect with spirit or talking with them. I think what does surprise me is, one, that not everybody else is doing that. I don't think I'm special. Yes, I put a lot of time and energy into researching and perfecting my skills, but I think everybody can do it. But number two, it's actually the condition, the attitude, and the feelings that spirits have on the other side once they leave this plane. They take their personalities with them. And so what they didn't accomplish over here, or maybe some of the things that they did that they didn't like, they still want to fix and rectify and resolve on the other side. And they're so anxious and desperate to connect with us and help us. I think that's the thing that really surprises me the most.
Why aren't we communicating more with the spirits?
Oh, I can tell you why. It has nothing to do with what's interfering other than ourselves. You see, we have only one channel that connects to your soul, to the higher realm, to spirit, to any spirit on the other side. And that channel is located within your heart. Now, here's the problem with that. As long as you have positive beliefs, positive attitudes, positive energy, you are opening that channel up. But you close it down instantaneously the moment you start having negative feelings, negative self-feelings, fear, doubt, anguish, stress. That shuts down that channel. So what's happened today, Michael, is those the spirits on the other side, and let me tell you, over the past year, they've been screaming to help us, okay? A bullhorn couldn't shout any louder than they are, trying to get in our ears, hey, don't do that, you know? But that negativity we've been experiencing, that stress, that pressure, that drama has shut down that channel. So not only can't we hear them, we can't even hear our own internal guidance. So that's the reason and what's gotten in the way.
So how then, and thank you so much, Vincent, that's brilliant. How then do we overcome the, please forgive me, chicken and the egg scenario? When we need to communicate, or when we need to actually go quiet and listen the most, is what it sounds like is the time that we're least able to hear.
The thing that has to happen first with the chicken and the egg concept is you must clear the channel, or shall we say clear the closet out. That brain is filled with so much hoarded, unnecessary stuff that you can't hear what you want to hear. You can't even hear yourself speak and think sometimes. People tell me that all the time. They're saying, oh my gosh, there's so much going on in my head. I can't even hear my own thoughts. And that is not an exaggeration or even a metaphor or figurative. That's literal. So if you can't even hear your own thoughts, that means too much is going on in there to start with. And just like you see hoarders on television shows, or you go to your closet, you open it up, you go to your drawers, you see all that unnecessary stuff in there. Oh my gosh, you're addict, forget it. That's what we're loaded down with. You've got to clear that out first. Now, that's part one. Ask the right question.
Yeah.
You said part two much earlier in this discussion, and it has to be and is one of the most difficult parts that we have as humans to start with. Listening. Listen. You have to listen, not just hear the noise. Listen to the response, listen to the voice. We can't even listen to each other. We're immediately thinking about one thing before the person even finishes saying what they want to say. We're in la land while we're having a conversation with somebody. You have to listen to your inner voice and honor it. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote an entire essay just based on that. It was self-reliance. And in it, he writes about how important it is to listen to your inner voice and honor it, right, wrong, or indifferent, because it only becomes stronger the more you listen to it. And if it does make a mistake because you get it confused with your emotional voice, well, at least if you fall or trip, you're falling and tripping on your own words rather than somebody else's words and advice. But it does get stronger.
That well, you did just repeat it. That to me, what he said, Ralph Waldo Emerson, that point cannot be overstated. The voice gets louder. It only becomes stronger the more you practice, the more you listen.
That's right. Well, think about us. Let's say you have somebody that you have a conversation with that you know, somebody at work, whatever, and they may ask you for advice and you start talking and then all of a sudden they're off on some other tangent and you know they're not listening. Well, how often would you continue to have a conversation with that person when you know they're never listening to you? You'd stop. So the voice actually gets lower and lower and lower and can even stop talking because you've not listened to it at all. Or shall I say, you're actually building such a wall between your consciousness and that inner voice that you can't hear it anymore, that you can't hear it. It's gone. That proverbial wall that humans think that we build between us and the world, no such a thing. You can't do that. It's impossible. You're connected to everything. Therefore, you can't build a wall. Not even Donald Trump could build a wall, okay? So we can't build a wall. But where you do build a wall is between your left brain and your right brain. Mm-hmm. Your right brain contains your emotions, your nurturing, your intuition, your creative side, the emotional side, important. The left brain is the rational thinking, logical side that takes the risks. Because we don't want to deal with our emotions, we don't want to listen to them because they hurt too much, we build that wall between ourselves. Well, that's where your inner voice is, and you've got to break down that wall. Even if you put a crack in it by the work I said we did earlier, right? Now you put a crack in it, that crack gets larger the more you're listening for that voice. And your vision, it's not just an inner voice. Your brain has an inner ear and an inner eye. It only thinks in sound and vision. Mm-hmm. It doesn't spell out a word for you when you're thinking of something like a bed. You don't see B-E-D, you see the picture, you see a vision. That's your mind's eye, your third eye, whatever you want to call it. That can become as strong as you allow it by giving it attention. And so can that inner ear. That inner ear is when you're talking to yourself, or when you're thinking about something, you hear it, right? When people say they're thinking, you're actually hearing yourself. It's not a typewriter going, even though it goes that fast. You're hearing. Well, that same voice speaks to you. Now, don't be surprised if spirit sounds like you. A matter of fact, it should. Woo-hoo. And it, okay? It's not going to be some, Vincent, okay, are you going to listen to this now? This is God speaking. No, it's not going to sound like that. It doesn't even sound like Stephen Colbert's God when he's doing that routine. It's your voice. It has to be, because that's how you get to honor yourself and your connection and who you are. So listen, and whatever comes, as a psychic and a medium, I have to honor whatever comes to me. It could be wrong. It doesn't matter. It's mostly right now because of how much I have trusted it.
Thank you. So on that note, I have specific questions, but I want to see if you're guided, if you feel called, if there's somebody here, if there's anything that you want to share. And then if not, then I have a question or two, and I will have good questions.
No problem. You let me know when you're ready.
I am ready.
Okay, great. So the word opportunities kept coming up for me with you, because that in this phase of your life, you've done a lot of work. We'll get to that momentarily because they want to remind you of some of the things you've got to keep reminding yourself of. But right now, the highest energy in your life right now is opportunities that are coming your way. Now, obviously, you did talk about a producer that's coming in. That is part of the opportunity. 2021, especially for you, which I've been finding out too for me, is fulfillment. The word is fulfillment. You will be fulfilling big dreams. Now, you're getting cautions at the same time. Okay? The cautions are, know that you know what you're doing. Know that you know what you're doing. You and I both know that people are starving to death for knowledge and wisdom on how to change their life. They are literally starving to death. And that's why we're so necessary. So I keep getting to number 3. I don't know exactly what you've been presented with recently, but they're telling you 3 different opportunities are coming to you on 3 different levels. Okay? So now would be a time to meditate. Each one of them can be completely successful for you, but they look 3 different ways. And it's okay. You want to use and go for the way you're going to enjoy the most, and most importantly, has the least amount of pressure on you and demands. 2 of the opportunities have greater demands on you. The 3rd opportunity, it seems that somebody else is going to do most of the work. So you want the one that's not going to be as time consuming, because you've got so many other things to do. So there has to be live stuff, not just your show, in person. This will start, the restrictions will start dying down within this year sometime. Not in the early parts of it, but definitely next year. And you have to take the opportunity, especially next year, to be in person. There's one thing about seeing you on camera, and there's another thing about seeing you in person. Yes, your energy can come through. It will, it does. You don't have to worry about that. You're a great presentation. You're fun. What you see in me is what you have in you, and more so. But live, you create incredible events. And so you must consider still being able to do that. Okay. And keeping live events coming up. And again, that seems to be more in 2022 than anything else. And a lot of traveling. Keep yourself untied down so that the times you are free, you can do your traveling. Around you, that energy has to come into play. So we're talking about, like, with your wife, with partnership, with friends that are going to be helping you out. I feel that balancing in and working with you, those that'll be working with you, you will attract more into your life that'll balance into your schedule. And those that cannot will kind of just be on the sidelines a bit. So in other words, there may be some people you think about taking with you in this journey that you might not be able to. There may be others instead, because it doesn't fit well with everybody else. You again have to know you're the pilot. Okay? Spirit is the wind beneath your wings and the force and the energy. We know that. But it wants you to know you're the pilot. So you have to make the decisions. And you certainly can talk to Spirit along the way, as you are now, but you have to trust your decisions and not be afraid of them. You're the one they're going to turn to. They're not going to sit down and meditate the same way and send the contract over to Spirit. They're going to be sending you the contract, okay? And you're going to pick up the pen, and yes, you do automatic writing, but you're still holding the pen.
So true.
All right. It's just like, Esther Hicks. Now this is Spirit speaking directly to you. Esther Hicks became popular, not because of what she thought was her word. It's what the public thought was Abraham's word. And that was the wrong success. And that is the wrong information. because not everybody in the world is going to walk around and start channeling their higher self. They need to connect to their higher self and get that same information as them. As them. But it was a hook. It was different. And Casey did the same thing. Seth did the same thing. Jane Roberts, and all of them did the same thing. But it is them that is speaking. It is you and you, all of you, that is writing. Don't go beyond you, because here you are trying to teach people that they've got the connection, so you don't want to use a different connection in order to teach them that. You want to use you, and you want to teach them how they can make similar connections with themselves. Okay? That they're the ones that are doing this. They dislike themselves. They don't want an outside force coming in to like and give credit to. That's like giving credit to all the medication that is fixing everybody's mental life. But it is you and your journey that brought you back. Never forget that, and never forget that that's what you're teaching. And it wasn't spirit alone, because I'm connected to everybody. Not everybody uses me. You used me. Take credit for that, because that's what you're teaching the most. You're teaching people to use their greatest tools, not to become someone different. I don't want them to be anybody different. I want them to be who they are. That's the beautiful part. That's what I made so beautifully, is you already. We have a great relationship. I want you to trust that. Big things for you, big plans. Be ready. You've been waiting for a while now. You've got already great success, great connections. Now we need you more, and in a higher plane for you. And your wife is adding a lot to what you'll be doing and what she is doing. The two of you both have great. I need to put you in the public's eye. And whatever way you do that down on the earth is the way that we need to get it done. So you want TV show, let's do TV show. You want public appearance, let's do public appearance. But I will tell you this, one day you and Vincent need to be in an arena and have 80,000 present, because then you'll raise the roof.
Easy.
As we should be.
Automatic writing is perhaps the most cutting-edge tool for connecting with the other side, which is why we've written the definitive guide called the Automatic Writing Experience. To find out more, simply visit automaticwriting.com. It's my favorite way to help you to shine bright. Woohoo!